From the WATE.com Digital Center, answering your legal questions, this is Ask Isaacs. Now, here's Lori Tucker and attorney Greg Isaacs.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Lori Tucker, along with our legal analyst, Greg Isaacs, and I bet you know what we're going to talk about today. Barely the ink was dry on the oaths of office, and I mean President Trump started signing away. He signed so many executive orders, 200 orders on Monday alone. So we're going to talk about presidential power and these executive orders. And Greg, thank you for being here.
Lori, it's good to be here.
So let's talk about some of the prominent ones that are getting a lot of talk right now from a lot of people. One are the cabinet appointments, but the other are the full pardons or commutations for a lot of people, 1,500 people in the January 6th Capitol incident.
You know, President Trump went right to work after he was sworn in, signing over 200 executive orders, and they were a classic example of a president trying to flex his presidential muscle. You know, one of the first things he did, as promised, was commute and pardon. There was some differentiation between the January 6th defendants, hostages as he called them. Some were completely pardoned. That means you're exonerated. Your conviction or charge is wiped off your record. Some had their sentence commuted, which means if you were in prison, then you basically got a get out of jail free card disguised as an executive order, and some cases that were pending in federal grand juries, in prosecutor's office. When the president says stop and he has jurisdiction, you stop. Okay. So basically those 1,500 to 1,600 individuals were pardoned, commuted, and that was one of the most impactful executive orders that the president signed on day one.
You know, a lot of people on social media have been saying, wait a minute, some of them are still in prison. What's going on? I thought he said they were free. So what are the checks and balances that have to happen before all that?
Basically, it's paperwork, and like any time you have to, when you have an order that says, you know, commute this person, free this person, it's got to go through the channels. In this case, it would be the Bureau of Prisons, and then they've got to clear it and go through there. So that's just more of a perfunctory administrative thing.
Are you a TikToker?
Have
we talked about this?
Not a TikToker, but let's highlight some of these very powerful executive orders.
That's one of them.
One, a 75-day stay or reprieve on the enforcement of the law banning TikTok in the United States.
And millions of TikTokers breathing a sigh of relief. That was a very short ban.
Well, I think less than 24 hours.
Yes.
It's amazing. Here's some of the others executive orders of note. A freeze on all federal hiring, a requirement that all federal employees must report physically to work. They are no longer permitted to work remotely. Elimination of the DEI department. Those individuals were immediately furloughed. An executive order that sent over 1,500 troops to the border to secure the border. But one that is the most controversial thus far is the executive order. Oh, and before we talk serious presidential power and legal issues, one of my favorite, and I'm going to have to redo a website for some property that we have. We thought it was on the Gulf of Mexico, but now it's on the Gulf of America. So that raises a whole host of issues, whether lexicographers or map people must now pull out their maps and change their names. How does that work? Because that's
international.
It's going to be interesting.
So does he have presidential powers over an international body of water and its name?
Well, you know, if you've got a globe in your study or in your office, you need to get that Sharpie out and scratch through. But here's the interesting thing, and this shows the battle with limitations on presidential power. So basically, an executive order is something that is valid if it's within the scope of the president's authority and power. Basically, if it's constitutional. For example, he has the authority to order the military to do certain things, like report to the border. He has the power to abolish federal administrative agencies, to issue mandates. And these executive orders, once signed, are filed with the Congressional Registry, and they're a mandate. They're a directive.
And people wonder, can Congress step in? Can there be a back and forth?
All right, let's talk about which branch is more powerful: the executive, the House, or the Senate. So basically, what happens is the Senate can do, or the Congress can do one or two things. They can move to override this executive order. Then the president can veto
Right.
that.
Yes.
Then, if they are really at odds, then Congress can override the executive veto by a 2/3 majority vote.
Is it a done deal then, or does
Well,
the president have power to yet come
it
back
is.
again?
So then, and we've seen a number of lawsuits, as soon as these executive orders were signed, lawyers were standing waiting to file cases throughout the United States. And basically, if a judge issued an order staying or overturning an executive order, then the president can go directly to the U.S. Supreme Court. So that's going to be an interesting development. But when you look at the limitations on presidential power, obviously executive orders can't be unlimited, or we would not need the judicial branch of government. We would not need the Senate.
You'd
we would
have a
not need the House.
dictatorship.
We would have a autocracy, a dictatorship. But what's interesting is the executive order that eliminated or limited citizenship for those that were born or are going to be born in the United States with parents that are
That's a big deal.
illegal aliens. And let me tell you why it's a big deal. So the 14th Amendment clearly sets forth, and this is for hundreds of years, that if you are born, and the words are, or naturalized, you are a citizen of the United States, subject to its jurisdiction and the state that you reside in. So, that amendment was challenged over 100 years ago in 1898 in Wong Kim Ark, a case out of San Francisco. And in there, they were challenging the citizenship of an individual whose parents were Chinese. And because the parents were Chinese, they felt this individual should not have the right of citizenship. The Supreme Court unequivocally said no. There was a dissent, but it is constitutional. And there were only 3 exceptions, Lori, to the right to have birth citizenship in the United States.
Let's talk about those.
Yeah. If you were the child of a diplomat, if you were a child of someone that was involved in an illegal occupation, so if a foreign country had invaded the United States for a period of time, those individuals would not be entitled to citizenship. And the third was if you were a Native American Indian. But that was rectified by a statute that conveyed citizenship to those of Native ancestry. But other than that, it has been carte blanche for years. So this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, how far-reaching can this go?
Well,
and how many lawsuits are we going to see?
Well, we are going to see. But what's going to be interesting, if the president can, with an executive order, directly contradict, modify, change an amendment to the United States Constitution, that is going to open Pandora's box. So what I anticipate legally is going to happen, this challenge is going to proceed quickly to the U.S. Supreme Court, because I anticipate that a district court will find the executive order unconstitutional, and then the president has the right to go to the Supreme Court, and then they are going to decide. But that will really draw a hard line on the boundaries or limits on presidential power being wielded through an executive order.
And it will also say very much about the power of the Supreme Court and where they stand with President Trump.
And this is really fascinating, regardless if you take the particular issue or the merits of a particular issue out of the equation, what you really have is a matter of first impression in terms of the power of our system of government. So you'll have a direct challenge by the executive branch to the Constitution. Then you're going to have the judicial branch that's going to be involved and at play. And then you're going to have Congress on whether they acquiesce or want to flex their muscles. So a very interesting executive order. And the complexity just never ends. Because think about this: if you have to have standing to file a legal challenge, that means you have to have a have suffered a harm or have otherwise some legal standing to be a proper party in a court. But if the requirement is that you're two individuals that do not have citizenship, I mean, if you are the named plaintiffs, have you flagged yourself for immediate deportation? What happens to your son, your daughter?
A lot of people are asking that very question today, right here in East Tennessee. A lot of places of business wondering,
imagine,
are people just going to come in? I mean, how would this?
So imagine you're the counsel for the government, U.S. Attorney's Office, and you say you don't have standing. Who are the plaintiffs? And you say Juan and Maria Jones, and they'll say, "Excuse me, nuh-uh. You have no right to file a lawsuit in the United States." So then you would probably appoint a guardian for the child that was born here. But in the interim,
and what happens to that child?
Well,
that's the big question.
That's the big question. So really, it's created just a Hobson's choice if somebody wanted to raise this issue. So what happens to the child? What happens to the parents? So that's going to be very interesting as
dynamic.
It plays out.
Yeah.
So there's a lot at stake when you look at our system of government, the different branches of government, as these executive orders are playing out.
Yes, there's a lot more we could go into, but I think we're almost out of time. Please share some of the questions you have when it pertains to these orders, and we'll try to get these answered for you. Thanks for being with us, and we'll talk more at 5:30.